The story begins in a conference hall filled with people, a man standing at the rostrum welcoming the freshmen to the Korean university. He praises their entrance, calling them important individuals who will shape the future of society, in line with the changing spirit of Korea University. Amidst this formal affair, a girl named Shin So-yoon raced towards the hall, her friends calling out to catch her attention. Anxious about her lateness, she approached her asking about the event. They inform her that the speech has just started, indicating that she hasn't missed much and that it wasn't worth listening to. The conference proceeds, announcing a congratulatory speech from the vice president. Yoon's friends express boredom, expecting the orientation to be more like a party. They reminisce about the good times they had as students in America, having fun playing games and drinking booze. Amidst their chatter, she remembered Han Young-hoon, who had prepared for the law school interview alongside them. Upon mentioning his absence, her friends informed her that despite a slight GPA drop, Young-hoon had indeed secured admission, unable to attend the event. Initially saddened by Young-hoon's absence, So-yoon's emotions shifted as her friends revealed his success. Confusion clouded her expression until her friends clarified that Young-hoon's oft-cited reason for non-attendance in the event is probably lack of finances. Leaning tiredly against the door, a boy reflected on his exhausting days spent tutoring. His mind ran through the chores awaiting him, the laundry that needed attention, the mold demanding cleaning in the bathroom, leaving him wondering when he'd find time to study again. Collapsing onto his bed, he glanced at his phone screen, realizing that the orientation wasn't over yet. Doubts crept in, questioning if leaving now would mean wasting the participation fee. His thoughts veered toward collecting 20,000 won for follow-up costs, closeness against the 150,000 won student fees per semester, all for the welfare of the students. Perplexed, he mused on the reason why someone would miss the orientation, citing financial constraints, especially when it wasn't about paying tuition. His friend even suggested just a contribution of 10,000 won if the drinks cost too much. His recollection veered to a realization, a world where some spent more than 7,000 won a day, emphasizing the disparity between financial situations. Feeling a mix of doubt and determination, he contemplates the daunting path of law school. The question lingers in his mind. Can he really do it? Can he measure up to the standards set by Korea University, the best school? Graduation seems like a distant goal, followed by the formidable law exam. He reflects on himself. His name is Han Young-hoon, a high school graduate still navigating the realms of academia. It's a bit embarrassing to admit, but he knows he is quite capable. Recalling the triumphant moment when he proudly shared his acceptance into Korea University with his classmates, the excitement that followed was contagious. That admission was more than a mere academic milestone, it was a chance to break free from the chains of poverty that held him back. Yet, he soon realized that his aspirations might remain distant dreams. His strategy takes shape in his mind, first, leveraging merchandise sales from Korea University to afford a tutor. This, coupled with scholarships, would pave his way through tuition costs. The ultimate goal, graduation and entry into a prestigious corporation. However, it all seems like a castle in the air now. In conversation, the shock on others' faces becomes apparent when they hear about his plans. Tutor? Korea University? The skepticism stings. His academic performance doesn't match the ideal. Financial management isn't an A+, it's an A. They probe further. Do you have any experience with American SATs or essays? He realizes that in the financial world, his father's connections carry the utmost significance. This semester has been a mess, but grades and specifications don't seem to hold much sway over him. Amidst the gloom, he muses on the society's rigid hierarchy, far more formidable than he previously perceived. It's a structure where those above kick down the stairs, making it impossible for even a snake to survive in this dry creek. Yet, despite the harsh reality, a yearning remains to ascend those unforgiving steps. Han Young-hoon is having a heartfelt conversation with his father about his aspirations for law school. His father, unaware of the specifics, inquires about what law school entails. Young-hoon explains its nature, emphasizing its potential for careers like becoming a judge, prosecutor, or lawyer. He clarifies the abolished bar exam and the necessity of a lawyer test post-graduation, likening law school to a preparation ground for this crucial exam. Understanding his son's ambitions, his father encourages Jung-hoon to pursue this path. However, upon Jung-hoon's admission to Korea University Law School, his father takes a drastic step. He closes the supermarket he's managed for 2 decades and returns to their hometown. Jung-hoon, feeling guilty, protests against this decision, reminding his father that there was no need to make such sacrifices for his education. Despite his anger, his father decides to use his savings, including deposit, entitlement, and pension funds, to fund Jung-hoon's education and living expenses. Jung-hoon, recognizing the gravity of his father's sacrifice, expresses his concern about the financial burden. He considers using the student loan system, confident that banks would grant him a loan for law school. But his father strictly rejects this idea, refusing to plunge his only son into debt before he even begins his journey in society. Disheartened but understanding his father's perspective, Jung-hoon decides to put aside his worries and focus on getting some much-needed rest amidst these stressful circumstances. In his room, Han Jung-hoon receives a distressing phone call informing him of his father's accident. The paramedic on the line explains the severity of the situation, revealing that Mr. Tae Sung-han was a victim of a hit-and-run and needs immediate surgery at the university hospital. An urgent family member or guardian's approval is necessary. Filled with concern, Jung-hoon rushes to the hospital, trembling with fear throughout the bus ride. Arriving there, he seeks information about his father's condition from the nurse. However, he's informed that visiting the intensive care unit outside the designated visiting hours is not allowed. Although he insists on at least knowing if his father is awake, the nurse advises him to rest, considering the time he has been there and the emotional strain he's enduring. Despite his worries, Jung-hoon refuses to leave, expressing his determination to stay. The nurse, concerned about his well-being, assures him that she will notify him if his father wakes up. Encouraging him to take care of himself during this trying time, she emphasizes the importance of his health. He comes back to his father's house. This is the second time he came here. The passcode is his birthdate. In a moment of solitude, Han Jung-hoon gazes at a photograph of his father, his mind clouded with uncertainty and apprehension. The weight of the situation leads him to question his ability to carry on if his only family member were to disappear. Doubt creeps in as he wonders whether he could continue studying, dreaming, and maintaining his everyday life without his father's presence. The echoing memory of his father's words resurfaces in his thoughts, a reminder of his father's unwavering belief in him. Yet, despite these encouraging words, Jung-hoon finds himself lacking confidence. The absence of assurance in himself weighs heavily as he grapples with the possibility of facing life's challenges. Seated solemnly on the ground, Han Jung-hoon's attention was drawn to a faint, glowing light emanating from a distant corner of the room. As he cautiously approached, his hands reached out to grasp the source, revealing a shimmering golden compass. Thoughts raced through his mind, pondering whether this belonged to his father, and why such an object was in their possession. The confusion lingered, leaving him puzzled and intrigued about its purpose and significance. Suddenly, the compass radiated an intense brilliance, overwhelming Jung-hoon's senses and enveloping him in a blinding luminescence. In an instant, he found himself clothed differently, immersed in an entirely unfamiliar realm. Bewildered by this abrupt shift, he grappled with the profound confusion of his surroundings. Amidst the confusion, a man nearby urgently spoke of defenses being compromised and the imminent danger they faced. The urgency in the air was palpable as voices heightened, warning of incoming arrows. Caught off guard, Jung-hoon stumbled and fell, wounded by an arrow, his mind swirling with disbelief and pain. As he lay on the ground, grappling with the intense pain and disorientation, a voice pierced through the chaos, urging immediate action to aid the injured. Amidst his distress, a single thought echoed through his mind, questioning the surreal nature of these events. Was this inexplicable sequence truly unfolding in the present moment? He finds himself lying on the ground, surrounded by men in armor who are discussing a dire situation on the ship. They're puzzled about the sudden turn of events and the lack of surveillance on the enemy's movements. Amidst the conversation, Yohun questions if this is all a dream. They're talking about an attack that caused substantial damage to them. Some of them are emphasizing the urgency of receiving orders to prevent further destruction. Some express frustration at waiting for instructions, believing immediate action is necessary to survive. A heated exchange occurs when the idea of running away is suggested. The idea is met with strong opposition. Their chief, Manho, is of the view that it's seen as equivalent to treason in a war scenario. Suddenly, there's a jolt as the enemy ship collides with theirs, causing Yohun to crash into the ship's walls, making him question the reality of the situation. One urgently shouts, "Row the boat! We must escape this danger!" He addresses Manhonim, saying he agrees with retreat, their ship was damaged, and risking more lives wasn't an option. Meanwhile, Young-hun, lying on the ground, couldn't help but wonder if their conversation pertained to him. Manho firmly opposes the idea of retreat, emphasizing the importance of awaiting orders despite the evident restlessness among them. He cautions against the consequences of disobeying military protocol. However, before the debate could continue, a sudden and fatal act occurs. An arrow strikes Manho from behind, abruptly ending his life. The assailant then falsely declares that Manho had perished due to an enemy attack, fell into the waters, and his body could not be found. Amidst the chaos caused by Manho's sudden demise, the commanding officer swiftly takes charge and instructs his comrades to turn the ship around promptly. He makes it clear that they will now retreat from the battlefield, emphasizing they cannot die without purpose in that place. Meanwhile, Yohun, observing the soldiers' actions with a mix of anger and disbelief, can't shake off the feeling that he is trapped in a nightmare. He feels as though he has been transported back to an ancient era, experiencing a vivid and eerily realistic dream reminding him of the Imjin War. The closeness of this dream to reality troubles him deeply. Suddenly, a figure with blonde hair appears before Young-hun, remarking on the chaotic scene. The person questions the consistent behavior of humans. He discusses human nature about loyalty and principles during peaceful times but scattering in fear when faced with conflict. He points out the difference between what individuals possess on the outside versus their actions in times of adversity. The man addresses Young-hun, seeking his opinion on the situation, but Young-hun remains silent, his eyes wide with disbelief. The man persists, questioning Jung-hun's expression, telling him he seems like the look of someone whose dream has been abruptly halted. Young-hun, in a state of confusion, questions whether this is indeed a dream. Touching Jung-hun's wound, the man tells him that this could be a mere dream, emphasizing the clarity and realism of the experience. Young-hun shouts if he is joking with him. Moments ago he was in his father's house, and why did this happen to him? Abruptly, the man counters Jung-hun's denial. He expresses disbelief at how quickly a person could endanger their life after returning from a vacation. Young-hun, overwhelmed by agony and confusion, finds it difficult to comprehend the man's words. The pain from his injury surges, and in his distress, Young-hun begins to understand the severity of his situation. The man, leaning closer, mentions something about the roulette and refers to himself as Messenger Jun, expressing an intent to assist Young-hun in this dire situation, offering a service called the Messenger Jun Special Service. And tells him to remember, this isn't a dream. There's only one way to return to his era. Complete the time roulette's mission and pay attention. The mission is to survive until the end. As the man finishes his sentence, he removes his arrow. Other soldiers protest by telling him he should just not pull out the arrow like that. But Young-hun insists that it was not him but the person next to him, pointing toward an empty space, leaving the soldiers bewildered. They escort him to a physician attempting to tend to his wound. Amid Jung-hun's cries of pain, the physician urges, "Hang on a little longer. Neglecting this injury could prove dangerous." Elsewhere, nearby soldiers discuss uncertain information gleaned from a fisherman. It might not be entirely accurate, but according to the fisherman, it seems all the fleets were destroyed. And they are still clueless about the controller's whereabouts. In another conversation, they mourn the loss of Jianra and Chungchong heads. Out of the 180 ships in the Joseon Dynasty naval force, only 12 of us remain as the surviving ships. Stepping out of the tent post-dressing, Young-hoon gazes at the ships, grappling with the reality of the situation. He cannot believe this is real. He remembered that a fairy-like entity promised survival. It hurts. It meant literal survival. Examining his reflection in a mirror, noticing the slight beard and hair tied in a bun, he muses. This is how he looks now. A voice interrupts, calling him by a different name. Hey, Choi Suk-young. Are you alright with that injury? Yoo-hoon, taken aback by the discrepancy in names, questions. Even his name is different from him. This can't be real. It must be a dream, albeit a very long, terrible one. But facing an unbelievable reality seems worse than enduring a nightmare. While rinsing his face in a bowl of water, memories of his father flood Jung-hoon's mind. Meanwhile, the general addresses his soldiers, discussing their retreat in the last battle without awaiting orders from higher-ups. The general fears condemnation to death if their actions are discovered. But we did it to survive. So I'd rather. His words trail off as someone enters, urgently reporting. I just received a warning. Startled, the group inquires. A warning? He informs the group. On behalf of the original missing commander, he has been appointed to the position of naval commander again. Skeptical, one of them questions. I was wondering what you are going to say. What can he even do with his troops? It's already too late. Young-hoon, perplexed, wonders about the subject of their discussion. The commander makes an announcement about the new controller, emphasizing his concern with written messages. His assistant informs him. Yes, Your Highness. The number of sailors dropped significantly to 7,000 in the last battle. If a naval battle is impossible, please consider supporting Do Won-su's army on the ground. Expressing the king's deep concern for the navy, the assistant seeks permission to reply promptly, requesting help to draft the response. He consents, urging, Yes, go ahead. It's not over yet. The assistant then reassures him. Your Highness still has 12 ships left. Commander says if you do your best, there's nothing you can't do. As long as the sun rises, the enemy will not dare to yearn for the seas of Joseon. A man bows before him, stammering. Your Highness, Commander! I'm very glad to see you again, I am very happy! The commander inquires. You managed to survive Jeongsang Wussu? The man responds, yes, he has greatly sinned, he was forced to survive with the Joseon Navy forces. He begs, please have mercy on me. The commander roars he will hold him responsible for defying orders and running away. Addressing the soldiers, he emphasizes. Backing away in front of the enemy is a sin even death cannot pay. However, this is urgent. And so, he will give another chance for them to contribute, and if they go to the battlefield with a weak heart, he will cut their throat before the enemy does. Meanwhile, Young-hoon, standing with the soldiers, reflects, This is exactly the same as an era I know. Caught up in the thoughts of Joseon's naval forces, war, and historical control of the three islands, Young-hoon found himself pondering deeply. No way I'm back in the past? The actual Indian War? He recalled the words of the blonde-haired man that there was only one way to go back to his time, to complete the mission of the time roulette. Contemplating survival in this era, Young-hoon wrestled with the possibility of his demise. But then, a sudden realization struck him. If this is the Joseon era, then he is a man of the future. He knows the future, and he has learned Korean history, so he can recall it. The only way to continue this journey is to have an innovative plan to survive. Sitting there, lost in thought, Young-hoon struggled to recall important details. He can't recall it as it's been several years since he took the SAT, but he does remember a big part of it. He delved into historical facts. The Indian War broke out in 1592. The reason why Joseon had struggled with its national power at the time was that there had been 200 years of peace since the founding of the country, so the military system was weak. Some commanders made incorrect judgments. And King Seonjo, who was the ruler at the time, and the king's orders. Suddenly, a man announced. A new investigator, John Lau, has been appointed under the command of His Majesty the Lord's Highness. Confusion arose among those present, with someone asking, "Who here is making all this fuss?" The man then directed them to lead the new investigator to the controller. He introduced him. "This is Kim Yakchu, recommended by the Chief of Justice of the House." Investigator Kim Yakchu greeted the controller. Emerging from the tent, he questioned, "Why did he come here all alone? Right now, there is a shortage of troops and supplies here. There's a new investigator coming from Hanyang, and he expected him to clean up the troops." The investigator, who is riding on a horse, inquired, "How could there be a shortage of supplies and soldiers? Your new appointment as a naval commander, hasn't it been a few days already? It's the commander's job to maintain proper security." Amidst the growing tension, another man interjected, "Impertinent! How dare you act like this in the presence of Joseon's Three Islands Army Controller?" Someone urged for peace, acknowledging the investigator's position. Responding to the investigator's presence, the controller admitted, "I've committed a crime, investigator. Thank you for coming all this way from Hanyang to investigate." The investigator dismounted from his horse and began. "Apparently, word has it that a fleet of 12 ships can vanquish their enemies. He has also heard about the incident where the commander raised his voice at His Highness. That air of arrogant confidence still lingers, doesn't it?" He continued, telling him he personally brought an additional warship and he should be thankful. Yohun pondered, realizing it was due to the commander and the king's tumultuous exchanges that the entire country was in turmoil. In comparison, Commander Lee Sun-sin, despite being the most active, remained unappreciated. He silently fought his battles. The investigator remarked, "I won't reprimand him for speaking to a superior," and he turned to leave. Yoon-hoon called the controller, expressing an apology for the actions that disappointed him. The controller, curious, questioned his identity. Yoon-hoon replied, "He is a soldier. His name is Choi Suk-young." He told him he heard much about Commander Lee Sun-sin. In the early days of the war, he secured victory at the Battle of Hassando Island, subsequently rising to become the eminent commander of the Navy. But recently faced defamation and imprisonment. The controller pondered aloud. "Has the rumor already spread this extensively?" He told him. He heard while he was conversing with Lee. Yohun responded, he saw him at the great man's exhibition. Yohun tells him even as a soldier, witnessing the lack of rigor in the new investigation frustrates him. He stated, "I'd prefer to penalize him before things escalate." Controller calmly replies, "The battlefield isn't a courtroom and focus lies in combating their enemies. Now isn't the time to concern themselves with private matters." He understands his worries, but the moment calls for grander actions. Young-hoon questioned him. How can he contemplate victory at a time like this? The controller countered if he was suggesting he should accept defeat. Young-hoon clarified to him that's not his intention and said it is an objective truth that the war is unfavorable, he dare not doubt it, but it's still a reality. The controller retorted that he was afraid saw him talk too much. Young-hoon responded firmly that it's natural to be afraid. If something goes wrong here, if they can hold their ground, there will be nothing left, the things they constructed to survive. He told the controller he does not grasp their purpose. And asked, "Are you not afraid of a crisis that could snatch away countless lives overnight?" In reply, the controller stated a perspective. If you seek happiness, you shall perish. However, if you are prepared to face death, you'll find a way to live. These are principles employed in the art of combat. Advising Young-hoon, he emphasized, if you belong to that realm, never neglect your training, not for a moment. Pondering on his own mortality, Young-hoon mused, I must also be ready for death. The controller encouraged him, highlighting, it's courageous to confront thoughts of death, yet it also takes courage to fulfill your duties when the time demands. As the controller walked away, he instructed, go in there. The enemy's moves are unpredictable. There might be a significant battle sooner or later. Young-hoon halted the commander, expressing a concern. Commander, if after today, just if there might be a naval battle in Noryang, please be cautious. Surprised, the commander asked. What makes you say that? Young-hoon admitted. I'm not entirely certain either. It's just a feeling that something might happen. Despite uncertainty, he urged the commander to keep it in mind during his time in Noryang. The commander agreed to heed Jung-hoon's advice. A multitude of ships floated on the water as soldiers aboard mocked. Stupid Joseon army! You never anticipated this side moving at the break of dawn. Keep your foolishness and disappear. You'll soon face the nightmare of 7,000 soldiers. Among them were Japanese Navy Commander Takatora Tadu, who added, You wouldn't think I was aiming a knife at you from behind. Alongside, Japanese Navy Raid Captain Kurishima Michifusa remarked, It's time to rid ourselves of that moron. It won't be long until this force annihilates the Joseon Navy. If I kill Commander Lee Sun-shin, General Toyotomi will have to acknowledge me. At this pace, I'll be a general someday. However, their boasting was interrupted when someone approached Captain Kurishima with urgent news. Dismissing it initially, he was urged further. Sir, this is truly significant. The Joseon Navy has already blocked the Myeongnyang route. Our ships can no longer advance. Shocked, Commander Kurishima reacted. What? It's as if he knew his side would strike. Amidst this tension, the ships of Joseon commanders, Lee Sun-shin and Kim Young-ham, stood firm. The stage was set for the historic battle to commence. Meanwhile, there was someone suffering from seasickness amidst the chaos of impending conflict. The commander's voice echoes, Reload the cannons! Amid firing a cannon, Young-hoon contemplates the familiarity of handling it. Seems like the original owner knew artillery well. It's second nature. Maybe muscle memory? Surprisingly, this era witnessed the inception of the first cannons. Loading an iron barrel involves placing gunpowder, an explosive substance. It's weighty! Connecting the wick outside, covering the gunpowder with paper and wood, then loading the emitter on top. Amidst the process, a fellow soldier advises, Push it in thoroughly! And be careful not to add anything else. There's an array of ammunition, starting with steel shells commonly used in cannons. These shells transform into small projectiles, akin to a shotgun blast, targeting the enemy. Soldiers warn to clear the way as they are firing the cannons. The cannon releases a hefty fireball. As enemy soldiers witness the cannonball hurtling toward the sea, they exclaim, The Joseon people are firing cannons. They possess something akin to missiles too. Young-hoon muses, Ancient people were very violent. A soldier observes, The enemy's movement seems suspicious. It's certain that they have crossed the paths. It appears they're maneuvering around their formation. What should be their move a wrong step and they will find themselves surrounded? The enemy commander contemplates. I can't lead due to limited ships. I'll be the one to capture Lee Sun-shin. Issuing orders. Halt rowing momentarily. With the waves against us, we can naturally retreat. Let's pull back first. No matter. Proceed forward. Even in this assault, we'd be entering the enemy's zone. Fear not. Even if 10,000 enemy ships come at us, we won't turn our ship around. Continue the attack. Disregard the sinking ships. Keep firing. Fire! The enemy commander emphasizes. It takes time for them to refill the cannons. We can't miss that chance. Row the boat. Close the distance until we can get on their ship. Joseon soldiers find themselves under a barrage of gunfire. The bullets are coming from every direction and the enemy's ship is heading straight at them. One urgently addresses the commander. They need backup. Should they signal the ships behind them? The commander reassures. These people have fought many battles with him. They know exactly what to do. Observing the situation, he notes. The ships are moving further away from them. The commander's ship is facing an attack. A soldier reports. There's another problem. One of their oars is broken. They can't change direction. The commander's boat is still moving. It seems they're heading towards the enemy. Amid shock and confusion, someone exclaims. What is he thinking? The commander. The flag has been raised. It's a sign for them to follow behind. They plead with the chief to give them an order. Chief! Even the commander is trying to kill them. Yohun contemplates. Even for someone like me, unfamiliar with battles, that looks incredibly reckless. There are so many enemies. What could Sun be thinking? It's like he's giving up on everything. Then, recalling Sin's words, he shouts, "We have to row the boat. Let's move forward." Amid opposition and shouts, Yohun faces resistance that he might have gone crazy and asking them to dig their own graves. Yohun explains, "Even if we are surrounded, this place is narrow. If we can't move, the enemy won't either. The space is narrow, so the enemy's big ship hasn't been able to enter. If we go head on, we might win." Another person interjects that he understands that. "But right now, it's too dangerous," he said. "Did you forget what happened? They said we had a chance to win, so they went in and died uselessly." Yohun vehemently shouts, "This is not my judgment. Can't you see the meaning behind Commander Sin's order? How long will you stay hiding? No matter how much you wait, victory won't come just like that. On a battlefield, hesitation means death. If you want to win, there's no other choice but to fight till death." As Yohun addresses the chief intervenes, asking them to row the boat as they are going to catch up with the main ship and head towards the battlefield. He asks them to prepare the right cannons for attack and prioritize protecting the main ship. If there is any boat blocking the way, sink them down and make way. Observing the hesitation, the chief questions, "What are you doing? Hurry up and move." Then, turning to Yohun, he commands, "And you, Choi Suk-yang. I'll leave you off with that for screaming at your superior. Go back to your place and do your job." With a push, the chief dismisses Yohun. While lying on the ground, Yohun reflects, "Even though I'm injured, he really doesn't cut me any slack." As a cannon fired, it started to tip over, and Yohun rushed to help. Concerned, he asked the master if he was all right. The master waved it off, insisting, "Come here and lift this up. I'm fine." At that moment, Yohun found himself pondering, questioning the possibility of returning alive that day and whether victory was truly achievable. Yet he remained resolute, affirming, "Today is the last day of this war." The mission persisted, survive until the end. Courage took various forms, and not succumbing to fear was another version of bravery. Echoes of Isun's and Jun's words resonated within Yohun, stirring thoughts about the righteousness of his decision. He contemplated. Was his choice the right one? Would staying have secured an easier path to survival? But regrets will surely haunt him if he fails to act. Meanwhile, the soldiers of Commander Sun announced their arrival. Sun directed them firmly. "Focus solely on the left. Don't worry about the right side." On the adjacent boat, the chief erupted in anger. "How dare you scream like that? Do you believe it's an accomplishment?" His frustration erupted further. He noticed his boat lagging behind. Sun says, "Do you reckon constant retreats ensure survival?" Mockingly, the chief apologizes and asks to grant them a chance to lend aid this time. Sun responded sharply, "Look at you boasting so proudly. Remember, poor performance in battle will lead to consequences." Kim Young-ham's ship was stationed on the left side of the Joseon army. Suddenly, a soldier pointed towards another ship and loudly alerted, "Chief An's ship has moved beside the main battleship." The commander acknowledged that they might have realized it. They cannot afford to lose. He asks to attack and protect the main ship. There's no turning back now. However, one among them voiced concern. There are too many enemies. Even if they sink their ship, they will keep coming from behind and their ship will soon be surrounded. In the midst of chaos, a soldier was attacked and fell into the water. Enemy forces were throwing ropes onto the ship, and they began climbing up. Frustrated by the incessant shelling, Yohun couldn't help but think he will become deaf because of these cannons. Someone cautioned him, "Please be careful, deck master. They are climbing from below. This is our chance. Do not let it slip away. Cut the ropes. Do not let them get on board." At that moment, an enemy fell into the water, startling Young-hoon, causing him to avert his gaze. Someone advised him, "Keep focused. It's not good if the guy who says cool things dies first." Just as the blonde guy appears behind him, leaving Young-hoon in shock, he exclaims as he shocked him. The blonde man informs him. He finally passed the mission. It's time for him to go home. Upon hearing this, Young-hoon shockingly asks him to wait a moment. There are still things he has to do here. The guy reassures him not to worry, stating that the situation has been reversed. He tells Young-hoon, "It's no longer a battle that can't be won without you. Look over there." Meanwhile, the enemy commander is shouting, "Where is Sun Shin? He will sink him down with his boat. Show yourself right now." Sun responds defiantly, "Since they are all originally pirates, the moment they see a boat, they will climb their way up, huh? But the moment they get into his boat, they will never get out alive." As the blonde-headed boy addresses Young-hoon telling him to leave the place, he tells him, "Mr. Traveler, your world awaits you." Suddenly, a bright light appears, transporting Young-hoon back to his house. His head throbs with pain, and he contemplates, "I've returned back to the future." Checking his phone for the time, he ponders. If it hurts, that means it's not a dream. It hurts. But even at that time it hurt. He chuckles lightly, musing, he dreamt something weird since he was so stressed. It felt like he had lived for a few days in the dream. Even now, his head hurts. Is he going crazy? Feeling thirsty, he turns around and is startled to see the same blonde head once more. He questions himself whether he is still dreaming.